Welcome to the Disrupt Your Career podcast, brought to you by Claire Harbour
and Antoine Tirard. We're passionate about helping everyone find fulfillment in their work life.
We believe that big, messy, uncharted career changes are inevitable, and it's up to you to decide.
Will you take control and disrupt, or allow yourself to be disrupted?
We wrote the book about it, and now we share here our conversations with other thinkers in this crucial area.
Settle down and get ready to listen to this dose of wisdom.
On this episode of Disrupt Your Career podcast, we're going to be talking to Sergey Gorbatov and Angela Lane. They're both what you might call enlightened corporate HR and talent leaders who combine their practical experience with thinking on talent through their Edge website and teaching at IE and other institutions. They're co-authors of the book FairTalk, which is a book about powerful feedback, which no doubt they'll mention at some point during the conversation. And their work overall addresses three topics: career, performance, and culture. So Sergey and Angela, welcome. Thank you so much for joining us.
Thank you, Claire. Thank you so much for having us.
It's great to be here.
Well, let's get started. There are two of you, so we're going to challenge you to give us a potted version of your career history, whatever highlights and crucial pivots and commonalities that you think would be useful for our audience to be able to understand who you are and why it's so important that we have you here in conversation today.
Maybe I can do it, Sergey, on behalf of both of us, just by talking about what our career paths have in common. And I think if you were to look at our resumes, you'd see what appear on the surface to be quite different experiences. But drilling down, what you'd find is some really common features. The first is that we have had multiple roles in organizations, particularly early in our career. We change roles often. That would be a common observation. You would be able to see that we have moved industries, had different industry experiences. We have been in multiple geographies. Both of us happen to be coincidentally sitting in the US this morning, but the US is home to neither of us, so different geographies, and moving between roles that test different levels of breadth of experience, while sometimes being in roles that really give you a deep expertise in talent and talent management. So some common features. Sergey, anything I missed?
One thing that I would add is that there is a common theme, and sometimes you might look at roles and think of those as being outside of talent, but there is a direction towards building expertise and towards building career around a purpose that both of us are driven to. And actually, the first step of our career edge model that we'll be talking about later is aligned to purpose. So that is your career experiences need to be aligned to who you are, to your personal characteristics, to your values, to your personal situations. And when you look at our career journeys, you can see how all of that shaped who we are today.
Fantastic. That's wonderful extra perspective, Sergey. Thank you. So here you are, two non-Americans sitting in America, working together a lot of the time, but probably not all of the time. I want to know what led you to create Edge. The homepage tells us that it's about owning your career, performing at your peak, and standing out as a leader. You need an edge. Why don't you elaborate on that idea and tell us more about what the purpose is of this wonderful website and work?
We have a very strong point of view that organizations don't teach people how to succeed at work. They teach you a series of jobs, they teach you a series of tasks. Through that, you build experiences. But no one sits you down and has that conversation about what makes the difference between two people who do the same job, perform equally as well. Why does one have a different outcome than others? And the result of organizations not doing that is that often employees aren't skilled. They don't know how to get ahead. They don't know how to manage career. They don't know how to be successfully transitioned to new opportunities or how to develop new skills in rapid ways. And as a result, we think those are some of the important topics that employees need to understand. A truism in our view is that those topics have always been important to employees and their success, but they matter less to corporations. No one cares more about your career than you do. And so we want to equip people with the skills that do give them an edge, because it helps them navigate success at work without trial and error.
Although you state that nobody cares more about your career than you, any work that any of us do, you with your model, your approach, us with ours, many others with others who help individuals to have a better career, guess what? Of course, the organization benefits because of all those wonderful things like not losing people through lack of clarity about where they're going or whatever. But isn't it interesting that it takes a semi-outsider, or at least an outside point of view, to make the connection?
Sure. And the point that I wanted to make, Angela, positioned that from the individual perspective, and that's how we talk in our articles, in our book, in our podcast. We talk to you. It's about your edge and how you can be more successful on your terms. But also we talk to organizations, and we're engaging with organizations around the rules that are fast changing. And this is the work that is truly important to us. We're passionate about educating not only the individual employees, but also the leaders and their HR partners around how to make sure that their people are successful and how that success is defined. Because even today, you can read these slogans on corporate websites. We promise you a career, or come and get a career. Snake oil. And anyone who promises you a career today is I don't know. I don't want to say the word charlatan, but I might.
Go on, say it.
Just to make a point. But wouldn't it be a better strategy for companies to say, if you come to us, we'll make sure that who you are is aligned to our purpose. So your individual purpose and our corporate purpose are aligned, so you'll be more engaged and motivated to join us and stay here. We'll make sure that you perform at your best, and that you develop to be successful in your role today and in the future. Will position and profile you both internally and externally. And also we will make sure that the environment is conducive for you to thrive, and making sure that you are the best version of yourself. So if companies understand that, we're reframing that from we promise you a career to we promise you satisfaction, development, success, as you understand that, because success is very different things to many different people.
Fantastic. I mean, you're preaching to the choir here, but yes, we love that. We love that. And we hope that your work will go far and wide in doing that. Now, in the career section of your work, you present this model of the career edge, which integrates a number of elements such as career visionary or brand builder. Could you take our listeners through the different elements that you have and illustrate how they might be able to apply the model for themselves?
Career visionary. Sometimes I think about us like, oh, this is great marketing. Career visionary. Visionary.
Well, it's possibly better than the snake
you've
oil,
thought
right?
about it. Is that too much to ask that people in organizations think about their careers? So let me outline the key tenets of the model, and then Angela, I'll ask you just to go through its elements. So as a career seeker, you operate in this environment where you can focus on today, or you can focus on the future, right? You need to be great today. If you are not great today, then your future is uncertain. It's much more difficult to get a job, a project, a good assignment if you don't have a strong foundation, if you're not performing today. So today and the future, that's one axis. It's the time horizon. The other axis is where do you focus? You can focus on those things that are internal, those things that you control. You can control what you want, or at least you can get more awareness and alignment around what you want and where you're going. You can control how you perform in your current role. You can control what you're learning, how you're learning, where you're learning. You can control your relationships or how you react to those relationships. And there are things that are external to you. That is, the opportunities that are available, the market, how your brand is perceived by others. And that is the second axis. Internal and external. And when you juxtapose those two, the time horizon and the focus, you get 4 quadrants. And I'll let Angela to talk about those.
Oh, thank you. And I point out that this is high level, but people could take a look, drill down, and get a deeper dive into any one of the kind of concepts that we'll describe. But to Sergey's point, there are intersections between time and focus, and those actually direct us to the factors that support career success. So let me give you an example. The first is career visionary. It's somebody who has a view to the future, knowing what's important to them as an individual. So you can see that intersection at work. So a career visionary is somebody who, knowing that, is intentionally planning their career. They're aligning it to their purpose, their aspirations, their life circumstances. Maybe we'll talk about that a little later. Their personal view of success. Sergey talked about the fact that we believe the only person that can define success from a career perspective is the career owner. So yeah, the first element is career visionary. Next is this idea of, and Sergey, you touched on it, having to be a value creator. A value creator is someone who's sustainably delivering outcomes that other people value. They're great people to work with. People want to partner with them, but they're also concurrently delivering now, but understanding what will be required for delivery longer term. So they're continuously learning. Claire, you mentioned brand builder, so important. A brand builder consistently makes themselves and their work positively known, and they make it known to an extensive network, they make it known to a diverse network, and they work hard to build authentic communities. So we're not talking self-serving relationships at all, but authentic communities. And finally, an opportunity seeker. It's that intersection between what is external to us, opportunities, and our future. How many possibilities are on the radar for us? So it's about getting as many opportunities in front of you as you can. It's testing those to make sure that they are environments in which you will win. You know, does it bring you more than you have today? And then it's not enough to goal set to get that next opportunity. We say this all the time. If we fail to successfully transition, and often people don't goal set through, they don't think about, well, what happens when I land? And our model encourages us to make that landing a success, because then when you're successful, the cycle can commence again.
A cycle, a constant cycle, is always there, whether we choose to see it or not. And playing positively with it can be incredibly valuable and successful for anyone who does it. Thank you, both of you, for that. Now, on the flip side, you've identified 2 types of behavior that can get people's careers into trouble: career drifting or career chasing. Could you describe these traps to our listeners and maybe share some tips that can help them to not fall into such unproductive patterns?
Sure, and that was such a great article. It created lots of buzz because people, I think in the comments that we got, people felt uneasy, maybe because they recognized some of their behaviors in those images that we've put forward. So the article that you are referring to, it sits squarely in that first and fundamental practice of career management, and that is aligned to purpose. Your career must be aligned to what you want, to who you are, to your personal circumstances, what you value. Because if it's not, then whatever you do is not going to be optimized. It's not going to bring you that level of satisfaction and success that you are seeking. So what are the ways to get misaligned? The 2 ways that we've identified through research and practice is career drifting or career chasing. So the drifting behaviors is, you know what, I'll just go ahead and accept any job that's offered to me. Or I'm following my boss to whatever company or whatever function she or he goes without thinking how it's aligned to my work. I will go ahead and be okay in any type of role without thinking how it contributes to my long-term career plan. Yeah, so the metaphor here is a leaf. fallen leaf from a tree, probably yellow, brownish of color, with some holes in it, and floating down the river, floating down the stream. The stream goes faster, the leaf goes faster. If the stream takes it into a moorish area, that's where it stays. So very little personal agency. The chasing behavior is quite different. So you need to imagine a dog, a pointer, or a Jack Russell. So I have a Jack Russell. Angela has two gorgeous collies. So they're very playful and frolicky, and they'll chase anything you throw them. You chase them a ball, they chase a ball. You throw them a frisbee, they'll chase a frisbee. And those type of behaviors we see very often, particularly with people who are capable, smart, and ambitious. Those who are marketable, those who can sell themselves well, those who are upward mobile somewhat. And because they are so visible and they portray those characteristics that employers particularly like, they are offered lots of opportunities. And they might jump or chase those opportunities without thinking how it aligns with their long-term career or even mid-term career. We're not asking for much. let's say even mid-term career goals will take that. So what we see very often, a person spends a year in the role, just going through one cycle without consolidating the learnings. And let's say it's an important role for their career. They would go and jump to a different one, typically with a promotion. They'll jump another one, and then another company will offer a job and they will go there just because now it's a senior manager or just because now it's a managing director, and they don't get all the foundational experiences that are absolutely essential for their success in the future at more senior roles. Second, they might be getting somewhat eclectic, patchy portfolio of careers that may or not be in their best interest. But what's really missing is the intentionality. So they're not thinking. And that is common for both drifting and chasing behaviors, right? It's not being intentional in how you develop and pursue your career. Angela, anything to add here?
Only just the story about how this came up. It actually came up, we were working together on something else, and we got into this discussion about what is it that we see actually happen in practice. And this idea of we all know the guy who just takes the next promotion. Doesn't matter whether it's interesting, doesn't matter whether it makes sense, doesn't matter whether it's working in a winning environment, as long as it's got the title or the wage increase or whatever. And we also know the really smart people that just bounce around. And we said, what is happening? And to Sergey's point, the difference is intentionality. I don't care, Sergey doesn't care what career any listener has. We really, really don't. What we care deeply about is making sure that you've defined career on your terms. And it's an expression we use often, because when you define what success looks like for you, when you reflect on what satisfaction comes from your work, then you don't do the mindless drifting. You don't do the unintentional chasing. You actually start to make strategic decisions about what it is that takes me to where I want to go. And that is a recipe for satisfaction.
Beautiful. So intention, mindfulness, being very clear and conscious of the choices one is making. That takes us into a slightly more controversial area of career, which is, you might intentionally want to go into a career for which sacrifice might be necessary. In one of your articles, you argue that while historically there has been an assumption of personal sacrifice in career advancement, that things have changed and companies are challenging this belief. We'd love to think that that was universal and complete and entire, but do tell us more about what you've been observing and what the good news is on this front.
Good news for whom? That's the question. For people or for
nice
organizations, for career seekers. the news is good indeed, just because the market is hot. The demand for talent is unprecedented. Just last week, I read the report that in some states here in the US, there are 14 openings for one career seeker. In California, for example, where I am at the moment, the figure is later, it's 3 point something. But still, the truth is there are many more openings and vacancies that the companies need to fuel their growth and to rebound back to profitability, or to rebound back to greater growth, greater results after the pandemic. And there is just not enough available talent. So talent has options. The talent can choose. Has this notion that everything being the same, who would have an upper hand? An employee who is willing to move, an employee who is willing to make a personal sacrifice? I would say yes, that is still true. So if I have two employees and one of them is willing to sacrifice more, for example, I have a job opening in Panama, and I have two employees and one of them is mobile, the other one is not mobile, they are absolutely the same in all other terms, well, I will give that opportunity to the person who can actually go uproot their family and move to a different country. However, now there is a huge amount of jobs and roles that can be done virtually, and employees are refusing to make personal sacrifice because they have options. The market has spoken, and the companies need to adjust to that new notion that employees choose not to sacrifice, not to make that sacrifice, and they're fine with that. And you know what? Their employees will be okay with that, but will the companies be? And without that realization, I think that the companies are losing, or maybe already have lost the war for talent.
I'm hearing that loud and clear. I'm also wondering, of course, what happens when we factor in any given individual's picture of what sacrifice looks like. For some, going to Panama is a sacrifice. For others, it's an adventure. So it actually gets even more complex there, doesn't it? Because it's not possible to make assumptions about what the population that could go into that job is actually going to see in terms of working from home or going to Panama or staying home in Florida or whatever it might be. But the fact that you're arguing that there is more agency on the side of the undersupplied candidates is nevertheless encouraging. But I guess once again, it's down to us individually to have that intentionality, to have that clarity about who we are, what's important to us, what does look like sacrifice and what doesn't, and then to be able to go into that situation and know what might play out.
Absolutely. That's a great point, Claire. And you're right. Very often for those high potentials, for key talents, sacrifice is actually an adventure. A great thing to be. However, very often it comes in the form of long working hours, probably on something they're enjoying, moving to different countries while uprooting their families and saying goodbye to their friends and breaking down their routines. They may not perceive that as a sacrifice. However, there is a personal cost.
Well, that brings us to another sort of mathematical / economic image that you use in your work. You talked, I think, Angela, particularly in another article about the notion of making trade-offs in one career, where employees feel they have to choose or are choosing to choose between their career and other important personal or other considerations. Can you give some examples, and can you tell us about the techniques that you use to help your clients and your coachees to think about their career as the long game? And I think it's got something to do with strategy rather than fear, which sounds wonderful. Tell us more.
It does. And although I probably get asked to talk about this because it resonates particularly with women, it is something we wrote together. And I think, Sergey, I might in saying it's one of the most viewed and downloaded articles that we've done. And I think that tells us something already. That's already a data point. It's an article that encourages employees to see their career as, the term we use, a long game. It's not won or lost with any one move, but it is a career that is able to be deliberately sped up or deliberately slowed down. to honor the more important considerations in our lives. We often see great talent torn between, the next big assignment and spending time with young children, for example. Or we would love to invest in further studies, but the job I have doesn't give me time for that. There's a promotional opportunity, but it is in a city away from my elderly parents. Organizations don't help us necessarily figure those things out. Our method is super simple. We document those kind of life events and milestones, and we encourage people to identify what is your pattern? What does that look like for you today? But then fast forward, what does it look like in 3 years? What would it look like in 5 years? So that you can get very rational instead of that awful emotional sense that we get about losing something. If I don't do this now, I'm going to lose it. It lets us get really rational about, what? I can't do this now, but in 3 years, yeah. So, okay, I can say goodbye knowing that I didn't miss an opportunity without being thoughtful, but I actually have an intentional plan to pursue this in a time window that works for me. Putting it down on paper has amazing benefits. That feeling that we have of being overwhelmed by these decisions really does dissipate. Often we see that some of these constraints that loom large in our mind are things that just go away in their own time. I feel I'm taking control of the decisions that I make. And if I choose to make a sacrifice, if I choose to make that move and I have to figure that out then differently as it relates to parents or other factors, I know I've done it based on the facts. And agency is now what I've got. And agency makes us feel empowered. Sergey, what do I miss, my friend?
That's a great summary of the article. And I really recommend the listeners to go and have a read on our blog at theedgeyouneed.com/blog. And then the article is called Don't Short Your Career, Play the Long Game. And why I'm recommending the listeners to go do that, because there is also a very practical tool that they can use, and they can think about where they are right now in terms of their career and what's likely to change and what's likely to stay the same in the short term, in the mid-term, and in the long term. And that will make their choices much easier. And as Claire mentioned, well, it will be around the strategy and not about the fear of missing out or not doing something or jumping into something they shouldn't be jumping to.
Fantastic. I think knowing that there's a tool there that they can download and play with and keep more in control and avoid fear is not just wonderful, but it's particularly appropriate in this mental well-being month of May. Anything that can reduce fear and increase agency is going to be wonderful. Let's think about feedback. It sounds a little anomalous in everything else we've been talking about, but it's an important thing. And you've written and thought a lot about this notion of FairTalk, which really explains how to give fair, focused, and balanced feedback. Tell us about what ways feedback is important in our careers, and what are some of the key tips that you have for giving feedback?
Feedback is essential for our careers. Research suggests that only 10 to 15% of people are truly self-aware, which means that the remaining 85 to 90% of us somewhat delusional. Again, exaggerating, but what it means is that we might have distorted perceptions of who we are and how we come across to others, right? Because self-awareness has two components. One is my internal self-awareness, what I'm good at, what are my values, what are my limitations. And the second component is how do I come across to others? That is how effective I am in a certain environment. And we know that 93% of drivers believe that they are above average. When managers were asked in a US Open survey to rate themselves or answer the question whether they're in top 10% of performers, again, more than 70% of them said, yes, we are. It's mathematical impossibility, but it means that we tend to overrate ourselves and think that we're better. And when you think that you're better, or that you're more competent in something, then your career choices will also be misplaced and misguided. Therefore, getting feedback on how you're doing and on your levels of performance, on your levels of competences, will make your decisions more appropriate and adequate and aligned with who you are and where your career is going, to make sure that you are more successful on your terms. Remember, it's always on your terms. So in our book, FairTalk, we teach people how to give that feedback, and it always starts with diagnosing the issue. There is probably at any given point in time 136 different things I can give you feedback on, but not all of them are equally important. So whenever you give feedback to someone, it might be your employee, it might be your peer, it might be your partner. Have you tried giving feedback to your partners? That's a very interesting conversation, I tell you. And remember that you can give feedback on anything. However, what will move the needle? What is the one thing that truly matters for someone to be better? Remember, feedback should always be given with the intent for the other person to be better, to develop further, to be a better version of themselves, to be more successful, to be more effective in their role. So once you've identified that and you've checked it for your personal bias, you've checked it for the environmental considerations, well, now it's time to give feedback on that. And there are 3 simple, easy steps to consider. First, you need to explain why that thing matters. We live in an environment where there is informational overload. So really, hanging this piece of feedback on the emotional hook or on the hook of the why, the purpose, the golden circle, whatever research you look at, it's important to convey to the person that what you're going to tell them really matters for their effectiveness, really matters for their identity, really matters for who they are, really matters for their career. People value different things. Find that thing that will link the feedback that you want to give to what's important to them, and you get them listening. The second step is tell me how the person is doing. And that's what typically is being taught in feedback courses. There are many different models, pick one of them, but you need to convey your opinion and your perception. And remember that feedback is subjective. Of course, it's subjective. That's why managers and supervisors get paid more, because it's their job to explain and to provide feedback and set expectations for their employees to make sure that they raise the bar on performance. So step 2, tell me how I'm doing. What are you seeing? What are the facts? What is the feedback from stakeholders? There are so many different sources of feedback that it's very important to package it really well and to deliver that message to the individual. So the first step, tell me why it matters. Second step, tell me how I'm doing. The third step is tell me what to do. And that is the feed forward piece that very often is missing in feedback conversations. Because people will say, okay, so I understand that this is where I am, but then don't let them guess what they should be doing differently. Lay out your expectations. And it can be done in different ways, but it's very important to take this conversation from feedback, what I've been doing, to feed forward that, okay, great, I'm invested in you. This is why it's important. Let's go together. And this is how you should be doing things differently. And remember that feedback doesn't need to be always negative, right? Negative, also positive. I catch you doing something that I really like, or something that makes you successful. I give you feedback so that you continue doing that. Right? That's my expectation for you to continue that behavior. Negative feedback is my expectation of change. So that you are better, so that you are more effective, so that you're more successful. I want you to change this behavior. And in that step 3, you can communicate exactly how.
Beautiful. Thank you. Thinking about feedback, we'd love it if you could share some examples of companies that might be doing particularly well when it comes to their talent and career management. We know that there's miles to go in so many cases, but what would you like to be seeing being done better? And who are the good examples at the moment?
Talent and career management. Those are two different things in my opinion. We started our conversation with saying that if a company promises you a career or that they'll manage your career, well, I'll be very wary. I say, I don't want you to be managing my career. I want to be managing my career. What happened to the sense of agency? So choose the company or give preference to a company that has strong talent management practices. Because if there is strong talent management, you can be sure that you will be given a clear guidance and clear goals set for you. And people with goals will always outperform those without goals. Organizations where feedback is hardwired into the talent processes, in organizations that provide timely support for you to develop performance support, development for the future, and positioning and profiling you, helping you to establish your network, and also being intentional and mindful in terms of matching the talent to opportunities in a way that it's timely and that promotes at the same time the interests of the individual and the organization. Well, go for those companies. Career is something that you should be doing. You're owning your careers. Don't give that ownership away. The companies may help you. The companies might have a point of view, but in the end of the time, it's you who will make choices and decisions. Your word is final, not the companies. But the companies that are strong in talent management will make sure that those two are as close as possible. Yeah? And those companies that have strong talent management outfits or strong talent management mindsets will know what's important to you, where you're good at, and will make sure to align the existing opportunities to what you want. And one company, I mean, there are many good to highlight, but maybe PepsiCo would be one of those companies that is gold standard for talent management. It's not a company for everyone. Right? So when it comes to the performance standard, when it comes to accountability, when it comes to responsibility for own development, for managing others, managing talent, it's a tough environment to work for. But then it also attracts certain types of individuals and they manage it well. They have clarity on who they are, how they operate, and what it takes to be successful there. And they are ruthless in turning that machine. Ruthless is a wrong word. Discipline is a better word. There is a strong discipline for talent management practices, and that's why if you get into that environment and you're successful, you stay there, you get disproportionate return on your time and effort and talent in terms of the benefits that you get for your career from that organization.
I would just add one, I don't want to call it an exception, but one thought. Many of those great companies, Sergey profiled one, have in place traditional and often proven practices for managing talent, often based on great principles, often based on great science. We recently published an article, though, that actually just challenged the idea that in today's environment, are those proven practices still fit for purpose? And the example we spoke about is companies like to develop employees in a structured way. We like to develop them through experiences and plan out a progressive set of experiences that deliver capability. That's not, for anyone who's a practitioner, that is not the reality of our environment at the moment. That combination of employees deciding for themselves more than ever before, combined with talent shortages, more vacancies than ever before, the idea of that traditional talent practice, curated experience, etc., has to give way for more modern approaches. So one of the things I'd be doing if I was talking to a company is asking them, how do they see things being done differently for today's environment?
Beautiful. When thinking about change, then, I have this question I usually ask most guests, and that's about a magic wand. If you had a magic wand and you could change one thing about the world of work, what would it be?
Looking at what's happening today with traditional practices and approaches being upended, I would say throw away the playbook. don't try to hold on to the traditional ways of managing people and running organizations, but rather think how the organization can be more agile and attuned to the market and to changing environment where it is the employee who decides at the moment. However, be rooted in science and remember that the principles that have always mattered today probably matter even more. Goal setting, feedback, vision, empathy, motivation. Remember that our psychology, our human psychology, has thousands of years in development, and that doesn't change as fast as the environment. So yes, the environment has changed. However, who we are, how we operate, how we think, how we behave as humans, what motivates us, what makes us stay or make us leave, what gets us excited, how people develop, those principles are still true, and the companies that ground their approaches into what's proven will have an edge over those that just try to follow the latest shiny thing.
Thank you. Angela, the magic wand passes into your hand now.
Oh, thank you. And I'm going to wave this very excitedly. It really is about companies, and I would urge anyone to put pressure on their human resources teams to teach people how to navigate the world of work, especially when things are viral. Teach people that career competence. And why do I say that? Maybe people will use that new set of skills you've given them to decide your organization isn't right. Or maybe, they'll decide you don't have the right roles that is for their long game. Or maybe they'll decide that the culture's not winning for them, or they don't get the learning they need. But let me tell you, when you give people the power to make good decisions, the best companies are going to win. The best companies are going to be doing all of the right things. So teaching people how to understand their company and hopefully how good it is will actually over time force every company to be better. The market will require it.
That's beautiful, both of you. Thank you. Well, just before we wrap up, tell us about any new and exciting projects that you've got under wraps, up your sleeves, whatever metaphor you want to use. But what's coming next for both of you?
I'd say there are two. There is a really cool programs for HR professionals that Angela and I have built together. And Angela, maybe you would want to talk about that first, and then I'll talk about the diagnostic for the career practices that we're developing.
Fantastic. Thank you. So we're so excited because we've just got back from a week in Spain where we were teaching a program. It is called Talent Builders Vision to Action. And we were teaching it for the first time, and we were teaching it for the first time live. It was building on a couple of years of virtual experiences. And it was great to sit with talent and learning leaders, but expose them to concepts in business, strategy, organizational strategy, marketing and branding, influence and negotiation, leveraging fantastic professionals from the business school, and then segueing into how do you bring all of that discipline into the creation of talent strategies for your organization? How do you make sure those strategies are supported, funded? How do you hold people accountable for them? And how do you know that you actually created value? And it was inspiring. So we are hoping to do more of that and to work with other HR leaders.
And I'll talk about this diagnostic that we're thinking about. So the career model that Angela described in detail, we've been using it to coach leaders and teach career seekers, HR managers on how to manage careers in today's environment. And the feedback that we've been consistently getting is, hey, can you make it a bit more objective? Or can you streamline that? Can you democratize more career management? And one of the ideas that we're currently working on is creating a diagnostic that is a tool, a psychometric tool that anyone can take and get a baseline or a view and understanding out of all those career management practices, where are the highs and lows and where are the areas of greatest opportunity that would inform their strategy for managing their own career. So if anyone is interested, we're looking for organizations, we're looking for partners where we would go and maybe deliver a webinar on career management. And that would be also an opportunity for the participants to complete that assessment. And that would give us data to do a proper, rigorous scientific assessment of the instrument that will just validate the scale and make it usable, and will make it very, also at the same time, very pragmatic way for getting more self-awareness around own career.
Brilliant. That sounds very exciting. And we will make sure that we do something to underline the fact that organizations could have access to this early contribution to
please.
it. That's wonderful. Well, Angela, Sergey, it's been an absolute pleasure. One never knows if it's going to be a total pleasure on a Saturday holiday afternoon, but it's just been so stimulating and exciting to talk to both of you. We will be very grateful, and I know that the audience are going to be coming in vast numbers to listen to this. So thank you so much for being with us.
Thank you.
Thanks for having us.
We hope you enjoyed hearing from this month's guest as much as we did.
Do go and check out our work on disrupt-your-career.com and come back soon. Thank you.